Okay, so most enterprise AI never reaches production. The figure that people quote is typically around 95%. But it's rarely a technology problem. The models, they work, but the projects, they stall because organizations start in the wrong place without a strategic approach to adoption. That's basically what the next hour is going to be about. Not whether enterprise AI works, but how to build it so that each thing you deploy makes the next one faster and more capable, instead of starting over every time. Hi and welcome. My name is Jan Overnay. I'm a technical product content marketing manager here at Squirro, and I'll be your host for this webinar. I'm joined by our CTO, Saurabh Jain, by Nadia Rieben-Gertenbach, who is our Chief Customer Officer, and by Domenico Lapera, who is VP Sales EMEA. Just a few brief words on housekeeping. The session is being recorded, and we will send the deck in the coming days. During the webinar, we won't be taking any questions, but feel free to drop any questions into the Q&A window. You can find it at the bottom, in the bottom bar of your interface. And we've saved the last 15 minutes to go through the questions together. But before we start, we'd like to take the temperature of the room with a quick poll. I'm going to open the poll. So you should see, let's have a look. You should see the poll open in a separate window, not just the one on the slide deck. And the question I'd like you to answer is, what's the main roadblock keeping your AI from reaching production? You can see all the options right there. If you're lucky, you don't have any significant roadblocks right now. That would, of course, be great. Let's see what it looks like. There are obviously no wrong answers. We're very curious to see where everyone is, because that will also help us shape basically our messaging and everything we communicate during the session. So there seems to be a cluster forming around getting security and audit sign-offs for regulated environments and quantifying financial ROI of our current pilots. Let's give it a few more seconds. Okay, nice. Perfect. So we'll keep that in mind as we proceed through the webinar. I'm going to end the poll right now. There you go. And the results are there. Okay, great. So here's how our hour together will look like. So Domenico will start basically with a market reality, why so many AI initiatives stall, and one way to break free from that predicament. Saurabh, our CTO, will then take us under the hood into the architecture, look more at the technology, what's actually happening at that technical level that lets the first deployment make everyone after it faster. And Nadia will then bring the view from the field, what this looks like across real deployments and what actually makes or breaks them in real enterprise situations. And then we'll put all the three panel members on the spot, so in a brief discussion. And we've saved the last 15 minutes for your questions. But first, we've got about 5 minutes for this section. I'll keep it quite high level. Who are we? So if you're not familiar with Squirro, Squirro builds generative AI for enterprises where getting it wrong simply is not an option. And we've been named a leader by Gartner and Verdantix, cited in well over a dozen Gartner reports in this year alone, over 24 last year. And because our customers are central banks, regulators, global institutions, and so on, security isn't a feature that we add. It's really the ground everything else is built on. So private deployment is a possibility. Permission awareness, the solution is fully auditable, ISO and GDPR compliant, SOC 2 attested, and so on. What matters though in practice is at the bottom of this slide. So you can see human in the loop by design, guardrails before automation, and decisions you can explain and audit, as well as autonomy that's earned, not just assumed. So we don't just hand an agent the keys on day one. It has to basically earn the trust first, keeping a human in the loop when required. And here's a list of people organizations that we work with. So you see central banks like the European Central Bank, Deutsche Bundesbank, as well as global enterprises like Siemens, Henkel, Vodafone, Intel, and financial institutions, manufacturers, public sector bodies. And what they all have in common, again, like before, is that they all operate where accuracy, security, and traceability are not optional. So one thing that's interesting to point out also is that many of these organizations, they could build anything they wanted to in-house, but instead they did choose to build on us because starting from a proven foundation beats starting from zero. And that's, as we'll see, that's basically the theme of the entire webinar today. Finally, this is basically the platform underneath all of it. So don't try to take in every single little detail right now. The takeaway is basically in the layered structure. So at the core, you can see security and compliance. So encryption, access controls, guardrails, all the things that your security team signs off before anything ships. And above that, you have the deterministic layer. So taxonomy, classification, and knowledge graph to keep the AI grounded in your actual enterprise knowledge instead of just guessing. And on top of that, you have search and agentic layer where the work that the business sees, much of that gets done right there. And Sarab will later on connect this to today's argument. If you remember one thing from this slide, just take this away. Basically with Squirro, you inherit one foundation, and every agent that you deploy builds on that foundation. So that's basically the stage. The question underneath all of it is the poll just surfaced also. Why do so many enterprises with all that capability, why do they still end up stalled? And Domenico, let's take a quick look at the market reality together.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, what we are seeing out there is something that you have already mentioned, right? So about 95% of enterprise pilots, they really don't have a measurable ROI. That means that you are investing time and energies, internal and external, but you don't have anything really as an output for a business. In the end, every business works in order to increase revenue, reduce costs, or reduce risks. And even GenAI pilots should follow that rule. But what we're seeing is that only 4 of every 33 POCs, they reach the production stage. Those are data from a recent analysis from IDC, but there are studies from MIT that corroborate those results. And we also know that 42% of enterprises, they will be abandoning some initiatives because they are just not what they were expecting. So we are really working on this project every day, and we've been thinking and trying to identify patterns that accommodate these different scenarios. So I would also like to bring in a concrete examples. We are based in Switzerland, and so I thought that this case about a chocolate factory that I was discussing with the CEO of this small factory a couple of days ago might bring a concrete case into the center of the stage. So that the CEO was obviously very interested in implementing AI, and they had identified a very concrete use case, which was about the quality checks. Swiss chocolate quality, it's obviously an important topic for them. And the specific case was that some of the bars, they will get out of the production line broken or misshaped. So they were thinking to implement a nice visual control with a camera that will just process and look at the image on the fly and identify the bars that were faulty. And obviously, it will have taken a couple of months to implement it, to tune the video recognition, to ensure that, of course, it was really identifying the indicators for that faulty parameters, and then somehow identifying them on the monitoring and sending the output to the person, the operator on the ground. But the reality is that they never implemented that case, simply because they don't have a fully automated line. At the end of that line and after the quality checks, there's still a manual operator that had to identify, pick up those bars, swap them with good bars, and put them in the package. So even if they would have fixed with AI the identification of the faulty ones with a better quality and a better percentage of identification than a human operator, they wouldn't have gotten any value out of that project, because there was still the human at the end of the process that has to pick up the stuff and substitute them into the package. And that, I think, is a good example, right? The technology works, so you can identify the faulty package, but if you don't think about the full process, you might spend a lot of time and energy in solving a problem that will not bring you a concrete result, that will not bring you a return on the investment in terms of money, energy, internal time, and external vendors involved to solve that case. So why am I mentioning this case, and what is the way out of it? I think most of the time we really think that companies go through the AI transformation in a wrong way, right? And there are 2 patterns that we have recognized. Some companies just think in platforms terms. And for example, you might decide, yeah, I want to have all my employee onboarded on Microsoft Copilot or any other competitive platforms, right? That's perfect, right? I can ensure quick adoption and can be rolled out quickly across the organization. The problem is that you're not thinking about problems, right? You're just providing another tool. We all know that we have too much app fatigue and context switching. You're just giving them another tool without ensuring that you're really focusing on the problems. You're really focusing on the elements that can generate a return on the investment. On the other side, we see other organizations that know the value of tackling specific problems. So they've been spending a lot of time classifying, receiving input, centralizing proposal from the different departments. And maybe they're thinking to bring in the best of breed solution for each single department. That's totally fine. It can work very, very well. But what's the challenge over there is that you need to rebuild the trust. You have to retest every single application. You have to ensure every vendor goes through the onboarding. You need to ensure, of course, that your data security is happy, the compliance is happy for each single case. You end up asking the users to spend a lot of time testing and retesting different applications, learning, of course, the nuances of each single application. So obviously that can be a challenge, right? And so what's the solution, right? What's our solution, at least? Our solution is relatively simple and is about combining the two elements, right? Having the value of something that compounds, but still focusing on specific use cases first. And that's why what we offer is an enterprise platform that can be configured to meet specific use cases. But we've been putting a lot of efforts over the last couple of months to really first deliver agents, right, that build this substrate, right, that provide the connectors with your enterprise systems, that solve the problems of permissions and governance, and ensuring that we are hardening those tools and that the users are happy. And then, of course, the second agent that you implement can benefit from everything that you've learned from the first agent, and you can just accelerate the time to market for the second agent. And even then, when you get to the third and the fourth one, you will see those compounding effects. So that's our view of this AI space. So thinking in terms of platform, but at the same time, focusing your focus and energy and attention on concrete use cases to be implemented fast and to ensure that this first use case deliver value so that you can trigger and make the people in the company excited about adoption. Thank you, Jan. I'll give it back to you.
All right, thank you, Domenico. So everything that Domenico just described right now rests basically on one claim, that the foundation that you build once, that actually carries forward, right? Sarab, our CTO, he's going to show us why that's true at the architecture level, like what's really being reused and where does it hold up. So Sarab, now the floor is yours.
Yes, so I will try to address the same topic from a different angle, right? Domenico already highlighted that these are the two paths that various organizations have taken for AI adoption. One is the horizontal path with the AI transformation across the organization, and the second one is a path for very narrow niche tools for solving specific use cases. If you look at the next slide, what we have seen in our experience, and that may not be your experience, but the experience that we have had with our clients is that every time we try to start with a very horizontal platform for a very major AI transformation, we have struggled to prove measurable business ROI in a reasonable amount of time. The projects have taken too long. The outcome was not very clear at the end of it all because of this missing element from the beginning. That is something that was also flagged in the poll earlier, where some of you also have the same challenge. But when you look at the extreme other end of the same thing, which is the next slide, which is where you see the fragmentation tax. Even at Squirro, we are not a crazy big organization. We are about 100 people. And we ourselves struggle with this situation that there are so many tools for so many things that it is often very difficult to be always on top of where exactly the data of our customers and where is the data of our lives. Now we have kept it in a lot of control and everything is fully compliant and auditable, but it takes a lot of effort and energy. And if I think that on an exponential scale for a 1,000-person organization, for a 10,000-person organization, for a 100,000-person organization, then things like duplicated data, overlapping functionalities between various applications, very fragmented governance in terms of making sure that all of these tools are governed well, a ever-growing attack surface in this new world of many different AI tools running around with your data with no clear visibility for you where all of that lives. That does bring a challenge that most organizations, CIOs and CTOs are facing today. Now, that's not to say that both these approaches are bad. They both bring some very important pros, which has worked in previous transformations, technology transformations in the past. And that is our pitch, and that is our strategy direction, that we want to take the best of both worlds. We want to start with a very specific use case, which is a use case. If you go to the next slide, so we want to start with a very specific use case, which we have done with our previous clients, where we have a very measurable business ROI. Since we have done it in the past, we know exactly how to deliver it on an accelerated time scale for a specific unit within the business to see value from, which I believe is becoming more and more important and necessary for organizations to see value in the AI adoption race. But at the same time, we build that first agent, that first use case on top of the same platform that we have been building for the last decade, to make sure that when you are going to build your second case, a third case, and a fourth case, then you are not going to be starting from scratch. You're not going to go through a separate audit process for yet another new tool, because you have already done that with this specific vendor. You will not go through yet again proving to your compliance department that the tool is actually secure and keeping your data private and compliant and all of those topics. Again, something that was mentioned in the poll earlier, that you are going to be able to benefit from it. So what is actually different here? The difference here really is how you attack the problem domain, that we start with a very specific use case or a catalog of use cases, and then every single new case that you build is going to benefit from having built connectors to specific systems, having built a knowledge graph that represents partiality of your enterprise knowledge. It's going to benefit from a sovereign parameter that we already have proven in the first of the use cases. Now, one thing that is very important here to highlight is that the numbers that you see, 100%, 40, 60, 20, 80, these are illustrative and representative numbers. These would be, of course, different depending on what are the second and the third use cases and what are the shared elements. But in terms of the shared substrate, if you go to the next slide, in our approach, you're going to benefit in your second, third, and nth agent with some of these common things. You're going to benefit from having connected to specific systems. What we have seen with our customers is that oftentimes it's the same document management system that might be useful for a legal use case, and it might also be useful for an HR use case, because that's the source of truth, or at least the partial source of truth for both of these cases. You're going to see things like audit and governance. No matter which use case you're going to do, you're going to have to prove that. But once you have done the first case, you're going to have the playbook of how to do that in an accelerated fashion for other cases. Sovereign parameter is something that I'm sure a lot of you have heard recently in a lot of news, right? This VPC deployment and air gap deployment and the ability to really own your data. This is one of the reasons where a lot of organizations decide to build everything from scratch on their own and going for this very horizontal push. But this approach will also make sure that you're going to be building on top of the same platform in terms of compounding this gain. Now, there are other factors here that are also going to be carried forward, but I believe there are two that is really worth highlighting, which is going to really compound a lot, which is the first one that will compound is the knowledge graph. This is our offering where we are with every single use case building a knowledge graph of your organization, your processes, your people, your products, in a structured fashion, making it very easy for the AI agents to query that knowledge graph for decision making, for answering, for process automations, and things like that. And since we don't have to build the knowledge graph for the whole organization, when we go with the use case based approach, then we can build parts of it and just compounding with every single case, more and more of it. And the second one that I believe is going to be extremely crucial is the trust capital, which is where all the security, the audit, the governance, can I trust really this tool? Can we work with this tool? And all of these topics will become trivial questions once you are past that initial stage of the first few use cases. Yeah, so I think with that, I'll hand it back to you, Jan, after a very short intro on our thesis here.
All right, thank you, Saurabh. So that's basically the architecture. So what's technically being inherited and why it holds up, for example, under a compliance review. I hear some echo.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay. But here's the thing that Nadia will tell you. So in the field, the technology is rarely what makes or breaks the deployment, right? Nadia is our chief customer officer, and she's been in these rollouts across a lot of organizations, and she's seen exactly where they succeed and where they tend to stall. So Nadia, if it isn't the tech that decides it, yeah, what is? So I'm looking forward to seeing your slides in this next section.
Thanks, Jan. So thanks, Saurabh and Domenico, also for setting the scenes. I think my talking points will overlap a lot with what you've already said. From a CCO perspective, however, I see how these points become very visible during a delivery phase. Now, we've seen quite a shift over the last few years, moving from AI capability, focusing on enterprise capability. And the conversation around AI has really changed fundamentally. A few years ago, we always heard the question, can AI do this? And I think nowadays, for most organizations, the answer is yes, we can do it. The real question that organizations that we work with started asking is, can we deploy AI securely? Can we govern it properly? Can we maintain it and scale it across the enterprise? And from a delivery perspective, this is where the organizations either succeed or struggle during the deployment of AI. Now, many companies have had very successful deployments of AI, or many successful pilots, but not so many have had full rollouts of successful AI capability across the business. And at Squirro, where we've had 200 plus production deployments, we've seen many organizations go through the process of trying to figure out what AI can do for them, leaving them to answer the subsequent question, how do we do it successfully at scale? We've moved beyond proving AI, generating an answer. Today, we are proving AI can operate reliably inside an enterprise. So how can your first deployment build on the foundation and fundamentally different from any other deployment that follows? Most people think that deploying an AI agent, in reality, they're establishing the enterprise foundations that every future agent will inherit. But what really happens during the deployment, or the first deployment as such? There's a lot of data discovery. Data quality is assessed. Implementation of the enterprise connector is set up. Identity and access management will be set up. Security reviews, compliance approvals, governance processes, user acceptance and adoption, change management, ultimately building organizational trust. None of these activities are unique to one single agent. They're investments in every future deployment. I would go as far as to say that the first deployment isn't really about the agent. It's about building trust in the ecosystem around it. And once you have that done, you are well on your way to being able to successfully scale AI in your organization. So what is the hidden cost that we see? In my experience, the biggest delivery challenges rarely come from AI models. They come from organizations. At Squirro, what actually slows down our projects time and time again will be stakeholder alignment on what the real value is that they want to bring. Data ownership, governance approvals, which impact how we set up our solutions, security reviews, business process changes, user adoption. Now, technology is often the easiest part. The organizational readiness is what determines success. This means buy-in on all levels of the organization for the tool that you want to deploy. For us in delivery, the reality is that customers often ask, how quickly can an agent be implemented? But the better question is, how quickly can your organization adopt it? Deployment alone doesn't create value, adoption does. An AI agent that nobody uses creates zero value for your business. The biggest blockers we see aren't module accuracy. They're organizational readiness, governance, and decision-making. Another point that is really important for us is that your AI should compound, not restart. So with every new AI initiative, you shouldn't feel like it's another implementation project. It should feel like you're extending your existing capability. So what organizations traditionally rebuild if they don't have a foundation are the integrations, the security reviews, the governance documentation, knowledge structures, access controls, and the list goes on. Every time this happens, they're paying the same implementation tax again. So what compounds instead with implementing a solid foundation with your first agent is leveraging existing connectors, approved governance, enterprise knowledge, shared security models, operational processes, user familiarity, and organizational trust. These are all topics that's already been mentioned by Saurabh and by Domenico. And this is why enterprise AI is becoming a platform strategy rather than a collection of individual projects. Organizations are moving away from one vendor per use case, department by department AI, and isolated pilots. They're moving towards shared governance, shared enterprise knowledge, and shared operational frameworks with reusable foundations. I've seen this at a major central bank where we are operating at the moment, where an additional use case in a different division where we have a rollout, we did a very successful POC, but it wasn't put on hold. So until the initial use case was done, to leverage all the synergies, they did not want to go ahead with the specific use case. This was a very smart move and a clear understanding that every time you start from scratch, you're paying the same implementation tax again. The organizations that win won't necessarily have the most AI agents, but they'll have the most reusable AI foundation. So how do we accelerate time to value? The biggest operational benefit isn't that AI gets smarter, it's that deployment becomes faster. Think of it this way. Deployment 1, we build the foundation. Deployment 2, we reuse that foundation. So the second deployment never feels like the first one. Deployment 3, we activate the new business capability. By the third use case, it stops feeling like a deployment and it starts feeling like an activation of an additional capability. Once the data is connected, the governance approved, security established, the conversation changes. Instead of asking, can we deploy this? We're asking, which use case creates the next business value? Also remember, most organizations don't have unlimited AI architects, knowledge engineers, AI governance specialists, or data engineers. So repeatability isn't just efficient, it's essential in this case. Most organizations don't have the capacity to run every AI initiative as a bespoke project. That's why repeatability matters. So the bottom line is moving from individual projects to enterprise capability. From a delivery perspective, we've learned that organizations succeeding with AI aren't necessarily deploying the most sophisticated models. They're building reusable enterprise capabilities. The first deployment establishes the foundation and organizational trust. Every deployment after that should inherit those investments. That is where AI begins to compound. And that's where organizations move beyond isolated projects and create an enterprise capability. First deployment builds trust. Every deployment after that should build on it. And the challenge is no longer whether AI works. The challenge is making AI operational, repeatable, and scalable. The organization creating the greatest values aren't running the most AI pilots. They are building an AI foundation where every new use case becomes easier, faster, and more valuable than the last. So we can go to the last slide on my deck, please, Jan. So as a concrete example of what Domenico, Sarab, and myself have spoken about today, I'd like to highlight two of our existing customers, both of them in the manufacturing domain. The one is a German-based company, Squirro, where we finalized the foundational deployment last year. We are now looking at deploying their fourth use case based on that foundation. The other is a Swiss-based manufacturing company, Buehler, where we already in this 1 year deployed 3 use cases that's gone live. We've scoped some additional use cases, which we will be deploying this year, with some additional use cases being explored for different divisions. So ultimately, the challenge is no longer whether AI works. The challenge is how to make AI operational, repeatable, and scalable across the enterprise. That's where we see the biggest difference between isolated pilots and long-term business transformation. Thank you, Jan. I'll hand back to you.
All right, so thank you, Nadia. So now we've basically heard 3 angles on the same argument, right? So Domenico told us about why most enterprise AI tends to stall still to this day. Sarab looked at the architecture that makes the foundation carry forward, and then Nadia basically on what actually determines whether it lands in the real world, right? And here's the thing, those 3 views, they don't necessarily agree. The strategy, the architecture, and the reality on the ground, they can pull in different directions sometimes. And that's what we want to get into in this short segment right here. So we'd like to bring all 3 speakers together, and I'm going to play the skeptic basically. And as a reminder, before we get into this, questions are up next. So keep dropping them in the Q&A window as they come to you. Okay. So now, Domenico, let me start with you. For a single workflow, right? Specialist vendors, they might have deeper domain expertise or more references in exactly that use case and maybe a lower price. So if I'm a buyer who only needs one problem solved, why shouldn't I just buy the specialist?
Oh, 100%. If you only have one problem, I will definitely advise to go for the best of breed software that solves only that single problem. The context in which we operate, though, is a little bit different, right? Organizations are complex with different departments, and AI is there to stay. We all know that we will not have a single AI implementation in our companies. AI can help different business departments to optimize different processes and different flows, and the capabilities are constantly evolving. So the reality that we are seeing is a reality in which there is a list of use cases that they're looking to implement. They just don't have enough time and enough resources, and they're just doubting, right, which is the right solution, because there's so much out there on the market. There's always the possibility there will be a new model release in a couple of weeks that will be solving your problems in a cheaper fashion that will be easier to implement. This is the reality of AI. So we are convinced AI is there to stay. The value is proven. The technical capabilities are not the limitation factor. And that's why we believe that enterprises should consider not only focus their attention on the single one use case, but to put it in a proper roadmap while still catering and giving answer to the specific business units that want answers now. So it's finding the right balance. And our answer is, let's ensure that you are compounding, that you're not redoing the same activities many times. So doing the activities that can be centralized and reused only once, which is, of course, the technical onboarding, clearing security, sorting out single sign-on, all these technical elements before, and then you focus your attention on implementing use cases that deliver value that will be adapted to each business unit.
Nadia, Sarab, do you have anything? Do you agree with that? Do you have anything that you'd like to add? Any counterpoints? I don't know.
No, as Domenico said, it makes absolute sense. What is really important is that Gen AI is one of the most transformational technologies that at least I have seen in my very limited career. And there's gonna be a balance that we all need to find in figuring out how to best use it without making it a very disruptive thing. But at the same time, what I have seen already at Squirro is that there are many different departments using this technology in many different ways to accelerate on the work that they do on a day-to-day basis. So while it would make absolute sense to think about the most accessible solution today on the market for a specific case, it would be prudent on all of us to really also think about, does that actually compound into an AI adoption across the organization, or does that become a lot of isolated silos because we all thought about our very specific problem and resulting in a situation down the line. The last sentence that I would leave the audience with and then hand it back to the other panelist is that I would like to I would like to ask all of you to really think that whenever you are doing an AI project or an AI use case or an AI agent, is your next AI project or the next AI agent is going to be benefiting from what you have done in the first one, what you have done in the last 5 ones, or you're going to be starting from scratch? And I think that's a very fundamental question that needs answering.
Yes. Excellent. So that's really, I think we can skip ahead to here because, yeah, that is really the main thrust of this entire thesis that we have in this webinar as well. It's really, will your second AI project start from zero, or will it build on the first? Every
Maybe, Jan,
go ahead.
if
Yes,
I may, wanted
yes.
to add something, right? So our experience really comes for the world of knowledge management, right? And that's why we focus this attention on reutilizing knowledge. So each enterprise has accumulated over the years informations that are not necessarily well documented and well represented, but they need to be shared across the companies. And that's how we came to this approach, is all the information and the knowledge that is in the company needs to be provided to the AI in order for the AI to really provide the benefits in terms of accuracy of answers. And that's how we came to this theory, right? There is a lot that can be reused, and that's why grounding your AI in your enterprise knowledge, connecting the existing systems should be the foundational layer on which you build additional use cases. Has been our own philosophy, and that's what we are trying to push on the market, because this is really how Squirro came together, right? We have on one side a strong base coming from enterprise search, finding the nuggets of information that are buried in one of the internal systems, and the other side, how can organizations structure their knowledge using the knowledge graph, using the best technology available in order to guide, classify, categorize, and build repeatable process to drive revenue growth, cost reduction, or risk reduction.
All right, thank you, Domenico. Yeah, and I think it's exactly this compounding. So what carries forward is really essential. And if you think about it, every vendor's first agent looks really great in the room, right? So you can see the demo works, but what you don't necessarily see there is what compounds from it. So you won't see the second demo, you won't see what the second one will inherit from the first. And that's really the question that we want to leave you with. And now this is basically what we've been also working on at Squirro. And this is really the part that I've been looking forward to, because everything you've heard so far, so Domenico on the two paths, Sarab on the architecture, Nadia on what it takes in the field, all of it basically points here. And this is what we've built in response, which is the Squirro Agent Catalog. And what makes it a little bit unique is that every agent in here is a proven starting point. So it's basically a use case that's already delivered measurable results in comparable enterprises. And every one of these is built on the same shared foundation. So wherever you start, you're building something that the next agent inherits. And let me show you just how to think about it. Still reiterating a bit what we said before. Basically, first, you have proven starting points. So you don't begin with an experiment. You begin with an agent that's already delivered ROI somewhere in an organization like yours. That takes a lot of the risk out of the first step. Second, you go for the fastest ROI first. So of all the places you could start, you start where the friction in your current operations is highest and the value lands soonest. That's where the AI can often deliver the most value. Not the most ambitious use case, but the one that pays back quickest and builds internal confidence, which ties us right back to what Nadia and Sarab were saying before as well. That's the one that really earns you the right to do the second one. And then third is, again, this shared foundation. So it's the part that mattered most, and it's what Sarab showed us under the hood earlier on. Every agent inherits the security, the data connections, the governance that the last one established. The catalog isn't a set of separate purchases, it's a sequence basically, and each step makes the next ones easier. And that sequence is also easier to see than it is to describe. Let me show you an analogy to see what it looks like. So here it's represented as a metro map. Now, normally a metro map would mean fixed lines, right? You board here, you end up there. In this case, every line is an example of an adoption journey, one of countless possible routes. So yours might connect points in a completely different order, depending on the bottlenecks that you're facing as an organization. And what they all share here is the important part. So if you look to the left near the numbers, the filled markers, they're basically the agents that are in the catalog today. That's where you board, where your business pain is the greatest. And then everything downstream is where the journey can go once the foundation is in place. And many of those agents aren't even in the catalog as detailed in the catalog right now. Every journey starts the same way, so where the pain is real, the first step pays for itself, and builds on one foundation, so every stop after that is faster, easier, and more powerful than the last. And where the line goes from there is really up to you to define, but it is definitely on the journey towards deeper and deeper AI transformation of your organization. So that's the catalog, and it's live on our website right now. You can explore the full map and every agent in it yourself, and we'll share the links at the end of this presentation. But just to close before we get to your questions, let me leave you with the bigger picture before we move there. So every organization here is going to build its AI estate one way or another over the next few years, right? That's what Domenico also said before. The only real choice is whether each thing you build makes the next one easier, or whether you start from zero over and over and end up managing like a pile of tools instead of something that really compounds. And that's the difference between having a dozen AI projects and having an AI strategy. And it's decided not by how much you spend, but basically by where you start. So that's what we wanted to put in front of you today. Now I guess it's time to get into your questions, because the most useful thing that we can do with the remaining bit over 15 minutes is basically talk about maybe where your line would start, or see what else you have in mind. We have the full panel here with us again. We also have a bunch of questions that have come in. So Domenico, Sarab, Nadia, maybe you can already take a look. I see a first one, which is quite high level, which is, why do AI projects take so long? And I think Nadia, that one's really tailored to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is right down my alley. So why does it take so long? There are a number of reasons, but as I mentioned to you earlier as well, main things that we see is the technology is usually not the main issue. It's integrating the data, the governance, getting the security done, getting organizational alignment. So those are the factors that usually take the longest. We often start with the deployment just to realize that maybe the organization has not really taken enough time to really understand what the real value is that they want to see. So there are iterations continuously to be sure that we eventually bring them the best value for the use case that they've asked for. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Does anybody see a question that they would like to take now?
Yeah, sure. I can take the question from Robert.
Yeah.
About our licensing model. And Robert, we have different options. Traditionally, the pricing of AI applications is on number of users, so we do support this model. We also have different approach to pricing, and when it comes to our catalog, we have introduced a new pricing model that is much simpler. You can buy a single agent starting at 35K Swiss francs, euros, or US dollars, and then, or you can buy a package of agents. We have a package about 95 and then going up from there. Or in terms of full enterprise Gen AI platforms, we also have different sites models. And of course, we have different deployment options. The price will depend whether we will be hosting or if the client's host on its own VPN. And also depends if the client will bring his own LLM, so bring your own keys, or if we have to provide them. So I cannot provide a full perspective, but we have a relatively flexible model that can be either on users or on package. And for the catalog, we are just introducing a simplified approach where you pay either one agent or a set of agents. If you want to know more, I'm happy to organize a one-to-one call with you.
Great. So let's have a look. How would you measure the compounding effect of the use cases? I see, Domenico, you said you volunteered
Oh,
to
thank
answer
you.
that
That's a
one.
great question as well, right? Because we are beating on this compounding effect, and I think Saurabh has been explaining it, and I think it's important for us to add a couple of elements on that topic. So the way we came up with this catalog and the way we have analyzed on our limited data set this compounding effect is really based on empirical data. So we're really analyzing all the about 200 projects we've been doing over the last couple of years. And as I say, Squirro has been in the game for a while because we were doing AI before AI was a thing. It used to be called, of course, more enterprise search and NLP, and we were using different AI technologies. So we do have a good set of data, and we've been really focusing our attention on our clients and how the implementation of our clients, where they started from one use case, and then they moved and added additional use cases, went, and we analyze a couple of parameters like really the amount of time invested in bringing the use case live, and also the value that the single use case has generated, right? The numbers that we have presented are empirical data based on a very limited set of use cases, but they are really a summary of our own direct experience.
Maybe one sentence I can also add to it is that for one of the customers that Nadia was presenting, Bueller, which is where we started a few months ago, if we look at the time it took them to deliver the first use case and the time that it took them to deliver the second and the third use cases, it was an order of magnitude difference between the first use case and the second and third use cases. Because the second and third use cases, they could deliver much faster because a lot of processes were much more well refined. Security compliance was all taken care of. Connectors were already in place. And the organization also understood how to work with our technology. So that maybe is one more concrete, very concrete recent example from this compounding. Then I also see another question here around a trusted and clean content or the knowledge is a prerequisite before an organization can design and implement AI agents. So I'm sure most of you have heard the old adage that garbage in, garbage out. That unfortunately stays true also in this new world of AI agents. But the good news is that this is not a new problem for us. This is a problem that we have worked with also before the LLM and the AI agents era. And the way we generally go about it is that we have a very sophisticated data transformation and ingestion pipeline where we work through some of these mitigation efforts of trying to discard bad, outdated, and unuseful content before it ever makes it to some sort of a search index which AI agents could interact with. And how do we do that? Just to give you an example, when we are setting up a project, we're going to really look at it from beginning to end, which sources of content that we're going to start with. And at the other end of the spectrum would be what is the outcome? What should be the answers? What should be the quality of various actions that the agents are going to take? And we start with the ground truth around that. And then we try to optimize this cycle end to end. And this is where we generally would surface things like, oh, the document with the title final is actually an outdated document. It should be final. So these kind of battles we have worked through. But your assessment is right, but we're going to be there to help you on that journey.
Here's one that's probably Oh, no, there's a new one that came in right now.
Yes, so I can also answer that. How do you handle multi-model content context? For example, some customers have a lot of visual data. I'll do a brief and then I'll hand it over to Domenico, who also wants to add a few thoughts on this. So Squirro historically has been championing the NLP processing pipeline. So we mostly have worked with unstructured data. But in the last 2, 3 years, there are some meaningful additions that we have done to our platform to be able to handle other visual elements. So the first meaningful addition is that now with the Squirro platform, you are able to also work with things like graphs, images, tables, and things like that. So if you have in your content a long report which talks about various graphs, tables, and things like that, we are going to make sure that we extract that content, embed it in the right way, store it in the right way, and then also rely on some level of LLM understanding of the visual content to be able to answer questions that were not possible to answer in the past. So this is one level of, let's say, visual content. Some of our customers also come to us with audio/video content where they may have a, let's say, a tutorial on how to do a certain thing that they want it to be accessible and searchable in a video format. In those cases, we often recommend to transcribe the content and ingest it into our system as a transcribed text so that we can build on top of the foundation of search on enterprise content while linking it back to the original source of the video also to be able to do that. What I do wanna though make it very clear, just for the clarity of the audience, is that even though we could, but we don't do things like image generation. So, for example, if you wanna do some art generation or some sort of a visual generation, that we do not do. Maybe last point on that topic. Um, if you want to generate, again, going back to charts and analysis and visual content, that is something we would do because that is still structured analysis of data that a lot of our customers ask for.
Domenico, did you want to build on that?
No, I think Saurabh's answer is perfect. I just was trying to clean up the questions in the chat, so nothing to add on my side.
Okay, there's one I see here. Should we not be worried about vendor lock-in? So does choosing a platform force you to stick with one vendor in a rapid evolving environment? Somebody?
Well, yeah, that's also a very good question indeed, right? That's I think it's also what we are seeing out there. I mean, the market is very crowded, and you can, of course, if you're only using Microsoft applications or only using Google applications, there is a concrete advantage of using the AI solutions that they are offering because they're already integrated with the ecosystem you're playing. The reality that we see, the world in which we work, is that each organization has a number of applications. You already have the problem of having many multiple applications. And from our point of view, it's important not to outsource all your AI initiatives to a single vendor, but it's important to build in the know-how, the competences, because AI is there to stay, and the AI initiatives will be coming and will be implemented over different waves over several years. So what we offer is a pretty transparent model in which you're not forced to use all the components that we offer. You can just pick and choose whatever we have. We give full flexibility in terms of choice of LLMs and deployment options. What we focus our attention is really on helping you orchestrating and connecting to your system and providing all the tools that you need to build use cases that work. Sometimes those tools require the knowledge graphs. Sometimes those tools require multimodals, LLMs injections. Sometimes they would require some NLP processing. We're just offering the different tools, and we help our clients building and using the pieces that are important to solve concrete business problems. But in our case, I don't think they will not be locked in because we offer a modular, flexible approach.
One additional sentence that I can also add from a technology point of view to complement what Domenico has been saying. So we have also built our platform in a very open fashion, which means that the whole platform is accessible via APIs and via MCP servers where it makes sense, which means that you may have some of the enterprise knowledge and the content within our ecosystem, but we already work with clients where they would they want to use a different orchestration layer and simply connect to us to pull the content in a meaningful way and push it back also. So we are able to integrate with whatever choices that you as an organization have made in terms of your own IT infrastructure.
Okay, I think we're slowly coming up on time. So if we didn't get to your questions, we will respond by email later on. Now, just to the recap. So basically, enterprise AI stalls on a starting point problem, not a technology problem. I think that's one thing that we can take away from this from this webinar and from the experiences that were shared today. The number that matters is the cost of use case number 2, not use case number 1 necessarily. So use case number 1 is really about putting the stake in the ground, building trust, getting all the connectors in place, and having all the plumbing and all the infrastructure there so that each subsequent use case is easier to implement and more powerful. And basically, the right first agent is the one that is fastest to ROI and the strongest as a foundation. So if there's one question that you keep in mind, it's really, will your second AI project start from 0, or will it build on the first one? Now, if any of this resonated, here's what we would suggest. It isn't a demo, but it's more of a conversation about where the friction is highest in your organization right now, because that's very likely the entry point that you're looking for. And the catalog is live at squirro.com/agent-catalog. It will also be in the follow-up. So our recommendation is really to start where the friction is, where the pain is, and build where the value compounds. That's a recipe for your journey. Now, before we let you go, a huge thank you from our part. So also to Domenico, Sarab, and Nadia, and to all of you for giving us an hour of your precious time. Again, the catalog is available, and the recording, the slides, and links, they'll all be coming to your inbox in the coming days. And yeah, here is still the thought that I'd like to leave you with, right? I won't read it again. We've said it a few times. The value doesn't show in a demo, but it really is the only thing that compounds. So that's what you have to chase. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everybody. And we hope that you join us again for the next webinar that we'll announce in the coming weeks. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.